Welcome to Study Session 3, Development and Quality of Human Resources. Economics of Human Capital. Capital is an important resource that is used as a factor of production. It can be defined as the productive power of nations and man-made producer goods. One important issue is the capital must be produced at some cost. Incidentally, early economists have focused on physical capital and its combination with labor as the key factor that determines growth. However, recent experience has shown the importance of human capital. The economist's notion of human being changes from one of biological entity to that of human capital when he extends this innate mental force and raises the level of his skills so that he can make the best use of all other productive factors at his disposal. Human capital consists of all those qualities of a person such as knowledge, health, skills, and experience that affect his or her possibilities of earning current and future money income, psychological income, and income in kind. Human capital is a stock variable, while the corresponding flow variables are investment and depreciation of human capital. Human capital can then be described as a stock of skills and productive knowledge embodied in people. It is the productive capacity of human beings as income producing agents in the economy. Human beings are viewed as capital because of their importance in economic development. Just like physical capital, human capital has value as a source of current and future flow of output and income. In fact, outputs of skills, human resources, add incrementally to national product. It is in view of this that investment in human capital is often made. Investment in human capital involves taking various actions that can broaden and deepen people's capacities to think, act, and enjoy, and thereby increase their productivity in economic sense. Types of human capital. There are 5 main forms of human capital that may increase the lifetime productivity of a worker, although the relative returns to the different types vary by income and technological stage of the society. 1. School or education. This form of human capital improves the skill and productive capacity of the human resource. Different forms can be highlighted, which includes schooling and on-the-job training. In order for education to increase productivity, it should be related to work and environment and should be provided equitably among people of different gender, tribe, and background, social and economic status. This form of human capital also includes vocational relevant experience. This is the actual amount of time invested in acquisition of skill by doing the particular job. 2. Net childhood nutritional status. Nutritional status is childhood is the sum of several factors which include child's nutritional intake, exposure to infection and disease, and the child's workload. Both workload and exposure to disease place extra demand on nutritional inputs and reduces the efficiency with which the body can absorb nutrients. A child's poor nutritional status is often revealed in adults by stunting or by their nature height deficit. The main effect of childhood nutritional status is its positive relationship with adult productivity. Another effect is that good childhood nutritional status is universally correlated with chronic health problems among middle-aged and elderly. Also, childhood nutrition status enhances the performance of children in school and in their early training tasks, and thereby affects in the return to other human capital investment. Child nutrition status. This is based on height and weight. 1. Underweight. Weight for age weight less than the standard weight of required age. 2. Stunting. Height not up to standard height of reference age. 3. Wasting, weight for height. Child nutrition and health is important because the height a child will reach is already determined by age 5. This can be due to the nutrition before that age. Adults' current health and nutritional status. This is measured by weight for height squared, called body mass index, BMI. It is a simple index of weight for height that is commonly used to classify underweight, overweight, and obesity in adults. BMI affects current productivity of individuals, especially for energy demanding tasks and at low levels of calories. BMI is used to measure adult health and nutrition. BMI is defined as weight in kilogram divided by height in centimeters squared. Table 1. The International Classification of Adult Underweight, Overweight, and Obesity according to BMI. 3. Migration. This is referred to as any movement of adults from their region of birth. Migration occurs repeatedly over a lifetime and involves return migration. It should be noted that migration occurs more frequently for more educated individuals, suggesting that education and migration are complementary forms of human capital. In fact, much of the return to education for rural-born individuals may be realized only through migration within the country or outside the country. 4. Capacity to avoid unwanted fertility. This enhances women's market productivity by allowing them to continue their education, to migrate where their skills are most valuable, or to allocate time to their most rewarding work. Economics of education investment. Education represents both consumption and investment. First, it is valued for its numerous benefits, and second, it helps to create income in the future by providing educated workers with skills and knowledge that enables them to increase their productive capacities and receive high earnings. Expenditure on education, whether by individuals, households, or government, are treated as investment flows that build human capital. As a result, most of the spending on education is regarded as productive investment. Every investment decision involves sacrifice of alternative opportunities. Investment in education is often evaluated in terms of supply cost and the relationship between the cost and benefits. For example, if resources are invested in education, they are no longer available to other sectors like transport, health, and so on. Also, both student and society must sacrifice when the student spends his full time in being educated rather than working. This table shows enrollment rates in sub-Saharan Africa from 1960 to 2006. Pupil-teacher ratio. If education is investment, what is the probability and how can we compare alternatives? Since we are not all born with the same potential strength, intelligence, or productivity, the inherited differences are magnified or offset by acquiring skills that make us more productive. The process of acquiring and sharpening our productive skills is called investment in human capital. Just as investment in new machinery or other physical capital requires sacrifices of potential current consumption so that higher levels of future income and consumption might be realized, acquisitions of new skills through education also require similar sacrifices. The time and money sacrificed to go to university or college are examples. College is partially a consumption experience for many students. This is because people attend university when they believe they will be better off by doing so. For some, part of the benefit may be short-term. They like the courses or the lifestyles of a student. Virtually everyone who pursues a college education, however, perceives that a degree is one step toward a higher stream of income and the good life. Thus, a need to select field of studies carefully, since some field of studies may go a long way to determine the future. However, the consumption benefits of colleges are unlikely to change much over the course of a decade, so changes in college attendance rates over relatively short periods of time probably reflect changes in marginal cost of benefits associated with the investment aspect of college attendance. Evaluation of education and investment. There are two main ways of evaluating education investment, which are: 1. Cost benefit analysis, 2. Manpower planning. Broadly, any evaluation of education investment has to take into the following: A. Direct economic returns to investment. This is the balance between opportunity cost of resources and the expected benefits measured by increase in productivity of educated worker. B. Indirect economic returns. This refers to the external benefits affects income of other members of the society. C. Fiscal benefits in terms of high taxes paid as a result of increased income. D. Satisfaction of the demand for skilled manpower. E. Internal efficiency of education institutes in terms of the relationship between inputs and output measured by wastage and repetitive rates. F. Effects of distribution of education opportunities on income distribution and contribution to the reduction of poverty. G. The links between education investment and investment in other sectors including health and agricultural development. Cost benefit analysis. This refers to the technique where cost and benefit are compared systematically and for the purpose of evaluating the profitability of any proposed investment. Costs and benefits can be analyzed as in other projects. An investment is considered profitable if for the individual or the society the expected benefits exceeds its cost. CBA is thus a technique to eliminate the need for guesswork or intuition, as it is systematic, reliable, and comprehensive way of analysis of costs and benefits. In CBA, calculation is often based on IRR. The IRR is the rate of return at which the present value of cost equates the PV of expected benefits, or alternatively, the rate of interest at which the difference between discounted benefits and costs is zero. Measurement of costs. Cost measured by opportunity cost rather than by monetary expenditure. Economic analysis of investment attempts to estimate total cost of an investment in terms of alternative foregone. To do this, it is necessary to identify all resources. First is the time resource in terms of time. 1. Value of alternative opportunities that are foregone by the society. Earnings foregone, that is, wages foregone, values of goods and services could have produced to society. Opportunity cost of a student's time is measured in terms of average wage of a worker who has completed the secondary education. 2. Fees and expenditure on books. Note that scholarship, bursaries, aids reduce the cost of education to the individual but not the society. Note that scholarship are not social costs of education because they are transferred payments. Opportunity cost of society. 1. Cost of teachers, other staff, measured by salaries. 2. School blocks, plants and equipment, measured by auto rents. You have a table showing social costs and private costs. Benefits, direct and indirect benefits. Direct benefit is measured by higher lifetime earnings. If measures of relative earnings reflect higher productivity of workers, what a more educated individual will earn after taxes above a control group of individuals with less education. Indirect benefits, externality. Externality associated with education. Tariffs of educated individuals do not reflect external benefits, which affect society as a whole but not captured by individual. They are hard to identify and harder to measure. These benefits include 1. Crime reduction. 2. Social cohesion. 3. Technological innovation. 4. International effects. 5. Fertility. 6. Standards of health and nutrition. Exception to ways as reflecting higher productivity is the screening hypothesis. SH postulates that employers use education qualification as a screening device to identify workers with particular abilities, attributes, and attitudes. This means that higher wage reflects these attributes and not necessarily their education productivity. The profile of age earnings by level of education can be drawn by conducting survey on age and earnings of individuals. Decisions about investing in human capital involve balancing higher lifetime earnings against the cost of acquiring more marketable skills. A person considering university has a choice between two streams of earnings over his or her lifetime. Stream A begins immediately but does not rise very high. It is the earnings stream of a high school graduate or secondary school graduate. Stream B, the university graduate that has a negative income for the first 4 years owing to out-of-pocket costs, followed by a period when the salary may be less than a high school graduate makes, but later takes off and rises above stream A. Both streams are illustrated in figure 3.1. Out-of-pocket costs and income forgone are graphed against lifetime earnings from a college education in figure 3.1. The dark line in the figure is a typical earnings profile for tertiary graduates over their working lives, while the dashed line traces average earnings for secondary school graduates who do not go to university. As a college student, you must pay for tuition, books, and other out-of-pocket expense. In addition, you will probably not work during this period. Moreover, your first job as a new college graduate may not yield the wage you might be earning had you gone directly from secondary school into the labor market and had 4 years of work experience. After a few years on the job, however, the profile of your income begins to exceed that of a high school graduate who goes directly into the labor market. The area in figure 3.1 designated with an A represents out-of-pocket expenses, tuition, books. B is foregone earnings, and C is the gross returns from college or university over your work life. Like any investment, these costs and returns can be converted to a rate of return. The higher the rate of return on your investment, the more you benefit from that particular investment in education. Characteristics. 1. Earnings are correlated with education. At every age, the highly educated earn more than workers with less education, and there is no crossing of profiles. 2. Earnings rise with age to a single peak and then flattens or fall until a retirement age. Profiles are steeper to higher educated individuals than for those with less education. 4. The higher the level of education, the later the age at which earnings reach their peak. The shortcoming. The caveat in this is that earnings is not determined by educational level alone. Other forms of investment in human capital, for example on the job training, as well as workers' natural ability, personal characteristics, for example attitudes, motivation, social class, facility, background, sex, age, place of work, and so on. Social versus private benefits and costs. The unavoidable attraction of higher levels of education is more costly than one could ever imagine. Typically, the opportunity cost to the society as a whole resulting from financing higher levels of education at the expense of expending the same amount on other productive sectors of the economy. Social costs of education in developing countries increases rapidly as students move from lower educational levels to higher educational levels. While the burden carried by the individual student, private costs of education increase more slowly or decline in some cases. This obvious gap between social and private costs of higher education remains one of the major reasons why the demand for higher education is higher than the demand for lower levels of education. But at full social cost, the educational opportunities for this distorted demand can be accommodated. If demands for higher levels of education are generated progressively through the system, the growth in social cost of accommodation is more rapid than the places it is provided. This implies that more resources can be misallocated to expand education when the ability to create more jobs opportunity is very slim. Rapid increase in marginal social costs of higher levels of education in developing countries can be attributed to two major factors. These are: 1. Capital and recurrent costs of higher education are more expensive in developing countries. 2. Higher levels of education are heavily subsidized in developing countries. Figure 3.2b invariable means that from the social viewpoint, the optimal strategy that would maximize the net social rate of return from investment in education is for the society to focus on providing all citizens with least B years of schooling. Beyond B years of schooling, additional public investment in higher levels of education would yield a negative net social rate of return to the society, because at that point, marginal social cost has exceeded marginal social benefits. Therefore, figure 3.2 illustrates the fundamental discord between the optimal strategy for private and social investment in education, a discord that will continue to exist so long as there is divergence view on how social and private investment in education are evaluated as students move from basic education to higher educational levels. The manpower planning approach does not believe that relative prices can be a reliable quote to future investment decisions. There can be shortage or surplus because standard requires more education for non-economic reasons only. In addition, they choose major subjects or courses in ignorance of or with no regard to career prospects. As a result, investment should be guided by manpower proceedings. This is because lags in response to shortages or surpluses are wasteful and inefficient and must be avoided by ensuring that the supply of workers with particular skills or educational qualification exactly matches the demand for their services. The manpower approach assumes that there are fixed trained, stable relationship between the inputs of different categories of manpower and output. It further assumes that there is a close relationship between education, qualification, and occupational structure. Hence, the future demand for manpower can be predicted on the basis of existing occupational and educational distribution and assumed targets for productivity or new growth. Methods of manpower forecasting. There are 5 main methods. 1. Simple rules of thumb. This is not based on scientific criteria, evidence, or analysis, but on value judgment. An example is the one used in Ashby report on Nigeria education in 1960. The manpower requirement was based on the assumption that high-level manpower should grow twice as fast as the target rate of economic growth, and that intermediate manpower, workers who had completed secondary school and had at least 1 year of post-secondary education, should grow 3 times as fast. 2. Employers' estimates of future manpower requirements. In this technique, a survey is carried out. An employer is asked to forecast the number of workers in different categories they would employ in the future. In many LDCs, these estimates have proved unreliable for some reasons, which include: 1. Bad judgment by employers about the future and wage levels, demand for their productions, and their future market shares. In Nigeria, this is the initial duty of the Nigeria Manpower Board. The Nigeria Manpower produced different forecasts of different categories of manpower, taking into consideration the skill mix consisting of constant ratios between highly qualified, intermediate qualified, skilled and unskilled workers. 3. International comparison. This involves simple comparison of the manpower and education structures of countries of different stages of development. The assumption is that for a LDC country to achieve faster economic growth, she should copy the structures found in countries with a higher national income. 4. Manpower population ratios. This involves making a forecast based on the ratio between one type of manpower and particular population parameters such as total labor force or school production. For example, forecast of demand for teachers based on STR and forecast for doctors based on doctor population ratios rely on demographic forecasts combined with staffing norms. One shortcoming is that this approach assumes that manpower cannot be substituted for one another. For example, teachers for bankers or nurses for doctors, and that capital cannot be substituted for manpower. This approach has been used for grade 2 and NCE teachers. Another shortcoming is that demographic forecast itself can be wrong. Most forecasts of school population do not take wasteful ratio and LFRR or women into consideration. 5. Projection of manpower output ratio. Here, output targets of various sectors are used to derive manpower and education targets for each industry, environment, or sector. It often employs a variety of other forecasting methods, including employers' estimates, international comparison, and so on. This method also has its shortcomings. First, the concept of fixed manpower output can be wrong, or these are substitutability of manpower. Also, the idea that there is a rigid relationship between occupation and education is for strong and may not necessarily hold.